All right. How'd you like that transition? Pretty cool, wasn't it? That's what we can do here on StreamYard. We can load the video, play the video, and then bring me in without too much bumpy weather. Although we'll see how the stream goes in terms of quality and transmission, which has been fairly dubious as of late. A lot of it has to do with atmospherics, and some of it has to do with look at that. I just put my logo up there. That's another little StreamYard edition. How you like that? I got a logo up there. We've got the background from 2001, A Space Odyssey, right there, because we're talking about Cancer. We're talking about the moon tonight, which is a very interesting subject and topic of conversation. So, yeah, we're going to get into it. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. We'll probably go for about 2.5 hours tonight if I can get enough meaningful content. Who knows? Maybe we'll even open up the lines tonight. Maybe you guys would like to jump in and be a part of the show. It must be Cancer season because I'm having to deal with my mother. My God. What a day yesterday was. It was a day, man. It was a day. So before I get into the day, because I think it's worth talking about. It's definitely worth talking about because my mother is a Cancer rising. And she has Pluto and Cancer on her ascendant. And boy, am I watching that Pluto and Cancer do its thing in her life. It is pretty, how would I say this? Pretty instructive. Like I always knew how Pluto and Cancer operated on her ascendant. Now I'm getting the front row seat when it comes to the most life and death and critical situations that I've ever seen with somebody's chart. Like I'm in the what do they call it, the symphony box or whatever. You know, when the symphony would play, you'd have those seats with the loge box. Is that what they are? That's how close I am to Pluto and Cancer on my mother's ascendant and watching this thing in real time, IRL. So welcome to the show tonight. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I like talking about Cancer. It's a sign that I think gets a little short shrift and is underrated. I think it's a really underrated sign. And you know, what I'd like to do at the beginning of a sign is to go through some of the characters who occupy that sign. And some of them you'll be very surprised by some of these Cancerian characters. And you'll see patterns here because we always see patterns. And when the patterns emerge, it's up to us to be able to make sense of the patterns and define order and meaning out of the patterns. And I think we can do that relatively straightforwardly without prejudice, by the way. And it's always interesting when we get into a sign and people will say, oh, well, that wasn't a very positive interpretation of my sign. Let me go to another channel. Let me go find another astrologer who's nicer. And look, I do my best to be honest. And do we have prejudice sometimes? Sure we do. We have prejudice. You know, like if I was a god, if I was like Zeus or Kronos, there'd be certain signs that I find perhaps a little more interesting than other signs. I'll be raw honest with you. I find my own sign the least interesting out of all the signs in the zodiac, I don't think, for me, Virgo is not that interesting. I don't mean to disparage other Virgos. And there are some interesting Virgo characters and some interesting Virgo characteristics, but I find other signs infinitely more interesting. So how's that? I find my sign not all that interesting. Again, that's not to say that there aren't some fascinating characters in there. There are, mostly women. So some of the most beautiful women are Virgos, but I'll save that for Virgo season. Yeah, we're here. Cancer. Cancer takes its time. It's not a fast moving sign, even though it's cardinal. So all you Cancers out there, take your time. Do things in your own time, in your own way. But once Cancer gets moving, man, look out. They're a force to be reckoned with. All the water signs are a force to be reckoned with once they get moving, even Cancer. So we'll get into the sign tonight. But right now, let me get into you. Let's see who's here. Who do we got? We got right at the top of the list. My man, Tomas Jordan. I don't know if you're part of the webinar yesterday, Tom, but we missed you. I'm sure you had something important. By the way, I had a great webinar yesterday. I might go over some of the material tonight only because there's a character that shows up under the sign of Cancer that was somebody who we spoke about yesterday during the webinar. So I may bring in some of the webinar material. For those of you who missed it, you'll get a little taste, a little appetizer. Susie Gemini in the house. What's going on, Susie? Good to see you. Let's see. Pen Greedy. Hello back at you. Who else do we have here? Claire. Oh, yeah. I forgot. It's remembered and it hasn't started yet. Well, here you are. And here I am. Just a little bit late today. The mother trip has definitely made me adjust my rhythm a little. Wendy Eater, the beautiful one, is here, greeting all the beautiful people. JJ Rain de Blanc has posted a video. Well, hopefully you can see the video after you see this video. It's me being a little Cancerian, a little territorial. Watch my video first. Don't leave my video. Let's see what else do we have here. Mary Lee. What's happening, Mary Lee? Humid day in Nashville. Soaked it up. I dread the cold now. Heat I can handle. Cold, not so much. Yeah, we like the heat. I tell you what, I don't mind the heat. I'll tell you what I have an issue with is the sun. The heat I can handle. But man, this fucking new light bulb that they put in the sky that is just blasting ultraviolet, white hot heat, or light rather than heat. That I got a bit of an issue with. Man, that fucking sun. It's been doing a number on my eyes for well over a decade now. And I've been trying to go out without sunglasses so my eyes can bond with this new level of white hot intensity. The heat I don't have a problem with. It's the light. All right, who else do we have? Meow 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 meow. Joan S., the lovely and talented one. She's with us tonight. Joan has been a godsend on the mother trip. I can tell you that. Let's see, who else do we have? It is hot as hell here in Texas. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's my man, Ryan. What's going on, Ryan? Good to see you here. Let's see. Esley, one to the tyrant, one to the slaughtered lamb. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Looking blue. I am, and this is blue. I think Cancer can be a very blue sign. When I think of the blues, I think of Cancer. Cancer can be mournful. It can be a mournful sign, especially when somebody leaves them. Then they really get the blues. Road Trip 1981. We're happy to have you here. Thanks for being here. Let's see, Sandra Jack Shaw. I'm actually at a fine Mexican restaurant. Well, go enjoy that fine Mexican cuisine and have an ice cold blended margarita with top shelf ingredients for us, please. And then report back after the second or third one so you can really get cranking. Glemma Spence, what's happening, Glemma? Good to see you here. I know you can't hear me, Robert, but I do greet you when you come on. Oh, well, thank you. Only the dog can hear me. Well, it's me, you, and the dog. CC Jones, fantastic. What's happening? P.S. I love you. I love you. You say moon. I do say moon. You remember when they called Cancer moon children? I'm a moon child. I think moon child is better than Cancer. I've never really warmed up. Yeah, and it's terrible, because they used to call Cancer consumption. Isn't that interesting? And then the consumer-based economy rolled around. And so calling consumption Cancer and vice versa, I think was probably not good for business. Consume more. What happens? Maybe you get consumed. I'm fiddling with my mic here. Let's do that. But remember, you probably don't remember, but that's what they used to call Cancer, consumption. Because your body would consume itself. It would feed on itself. That's what would happen. And I don't know when they made the switch, when they flipped the brand from consumption to Cancer. But I think it was really unfair to the sign of Cancer. And of course, Cancer got rebranded as being moon children back in the 60s and the 70s, and then kind of stopped. It kind of stopped. I'm a moon child. But it's kind of cool. It's cooler if you're a woman, though, I think. I think moon child and woman kind of goes together. It's even better, I think, if you have an afro and you're a woman. Just kind of saying it's a fit. All right. Let's see. Who else do we have here? You can't catch me over on 15 Minutes of Flame. Let's see. Third eye activated. I'll call in. Okay. Third eye activated. She's willing to jump right in. We'll do that maybe in the second part of the show. Dan, you missed yesterday's webinar, even after I sent out a reminder. And you're one of my top dogs here, Tom. You were conspicuously absent. I'm just saying. Let's see. Jan Schiavino. What's happening, Jan? Good evening to you. Let's see. Sounds rough. Oh, we're having lessons. We're having big life lessons. I have moon conjunct Pluto with Cancer rising. Well, Wendy, you're kind of in that boat. My gal, you are in that boat. Tenacious to the end. Violet Aurora Myths. I'm a Cancer rising too. My moon is at 29 Cancer, and the 29 Pluto's been working me pretty good. It feels like it's been hanging out in opposition to my moon forever, and it kind of has. But that's a really interesting opposition to go through. Man, oh man, those oppositions force us to go through changes. And they all seem sometimes outside of ourselves, but nothing is really outside of ourselves. Really, when you break it down, it's all part of you. Right? It's all part of you. Isn't that a wonderful thought? It's all part of you. It's the most expansive and empowering thought you can have. And then when you bring it all in, you're going like, oh shit, that's really all part of me. Okay, which part of me do I have to sort out here? Yeah. Whimsical Farm Girl. Nice. That was a beautiful photo you put there over there on Twitter. Whimsy. I thumbs upped it. I loved it. I hit that little heart icon. Nice little photo of you and your property. Very peaceful. What else do we have here? Somebody's texting me here. Oh, yeah. They're telling me about the astrology and football. I'm going to be on with my pal, Dr. Narco Longo, a new friend, Al Dog, ALDAWG, Al Dog. And I think, is Jeff going to be part of the show? Old World, Florida. If you like sports and astrology, chime in tomorrow night. It's one of my specialties. I get to talk about it a lot here because I'm respectful. I'm respectful of my audience. I know they can take a little, but too much, and I'll lose a lot of you guys. You see, I don't always force my passions upon you, right? This is all very Cancerian. when you look at the yin and the yang of Cancer, that's what it's about. It's a little me, little you, little me, little you, little me, little you. Usually, though, with Cancer, and you get the yin yang, the one's slightly bigger than the other, kind of 51-49. So you usually winds up being a little bit more of me and just a little bit less of you, but about as reciprocal as we can get in this environment. You stutter. That's okay. That's all right. I have a funny stuttering story. Dianzik. Did I pronounce that right? Dianzik, welcome. Christine Mose. Christine. She lives in a dream. Christine. Banana split lady. What's going on, Christine? Good to see you. Had a birthday on the 23rd, Friday, and there have been absolutely so funky energies flowing about. Yeah, yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Even that whole thing with the Wagner group was very Cancerian, wasn't it? It was sort of like, yeah, let's go to Moscow. Yeah, let's go overthrow Putin. Oh, let's not. let's go to go hang out with Lukashenko over there. Yeah, probably best not to do that. No, wasn't a good idea. That's very Cancerian, by the way. Very, very Cancerian. Let's see, who else do we have? Celtic Queen checking in from Westchester, Ohio. It's more like Westchester, New York. Famous Cancer, Georgia Guidestones. S. Lee. My birthday was the 23rd also. Oh, we got some 23ers here. Let's see. Who else we got? Loriana. I'm a Virgo, and I'd agree with you. I'm glad you agree with me. Yeah, I just can't, and I'm barely repping Virgo at 29 degrees. I'm the outlier. Let's see, who else do we have? WC Ray webinar. I missed the notification. Oh, are you a member? If you're a member, I got to react. I'll send it to you. If you are a member and you did not attend the webinar, you will get the webinar. Okay, you'll get the webinar. It's recorded. It's on Zoom. I just have to work something out with Mishi, the Doomer Boomer, and we'll figure it out. So, Robin, if you're a member, you'll get the webinar. That's how it works. If you're a member, if you are a Jove member, you get 2 webinars. If you're a Mars member, you get a webinar for free, right? And I haven't charged for a webinar in a while, but I think it's going to change. I think I'll have some for what I really want to do is I really want to do like a group long-term astrology course. That's what I really want to do. And try to pass some of this on. Let's see, who else do we have here? Aries sun, I rage, cry a lot in Cancer season. Well, squaring your sun there. Let's see, who else do we have here? Beth Berry, double B. Peter Bion, what's happening, Peter? Good to see you. Cassandra Lynn, she's with us tonight. Soleil, check it in. From down under, we now have turbo Cancer. I know, right? This fucking... We have to speak here still in code. I could question the election of 2020, but I have to speak in code when it comes to the carjack, because that will get me in trouble here still on this part of the YouTube reality. Pray for me. I got it worse than test anxiety. Oh, yeah, tests are tough, aren't they? I was never a good test taker. I remember when I was in junior high school. You have to take these tests, and then they place you into the next level in high school. And I was such a shitty test taker that I got. They had English 1A, 1B, 1C, and then reading improvement. And I wound up in English 1C, and I was in there for about 3 days. And the teacher said, "You don't belong here. You need to go up." So I went into English 1A, and yeah, worked out fine. But I was a terrible test taker. I didn't actually get good at tests until I was in college, and then I kind of figured out how to do it. But most of my tests in college were essays, and I could write an essay by that point. User 13, what's happening? User 13, Jola. Hi, Jola. Good to see you. It was a great webinar. Thank you, Fran. You were there. Forest Fairy Tarot, we love that you're here tonight. Thank you for being here. And I can see you're taking the rainbow back. I'm proud of you. Veronica's barn from my hospital bed. That's not good. That is not good. We hope you're okay. Well, I'm excited to be here. The Scaled Raven. Hi there. I guess we'll find out about Veronica and her barn, her hospital stay. Let's see. Karen McQuaid. Hi, Karen. Moniz Phoenix. Hello to another Phoenix. It is a hot Sunday. Let's see. Cold weather is your favorite. I can go either way. Here's where I am with the weather. At a certain point in my life, I determined that my well-being was not dependent upon the weather. That was like my first step towards personal freedom. If it's hot, it's hot. You roll with it. If it's cold, it's cold. You roll with it. If it's wet, you roll with it. Right? But the hard part is when it just is unceasing. That's the challenging part. And you really get tested. Like last year, we had like 25 days of 100-degree plus weather all in a row. And you're like, fuck, when is this going to end? And then you get the last year we had high winds. The winds were dust bowl like in terms of their intensity. But yeah, it's one of those things. I do my best not to be defined by the weather, because all of a sudden you have these external, things that are determining your well-being. And some people just do better in certain climates. In human design, I think I'm hot. They have it like hot. So I'm hot in human design. Now, I've heard that it has to do with like having hot drinks or something like that. But I don't necessarily mind hot weather. Again, it's this the blinding sun. PB, what's happening, PB? JJ's is a 3-minute video. Well, that's 3 less minutes that people would be watching me. I'm just saying. No, we love JJ. I hope, and when the show is over, spend 3 minutes with JJ's video. Fell from horse onto rock, smashed my face. 5 plates, jaw wired. Ouch. Oh my God, man. When that shit happens when you're older, it is not fun. When you're young, kind of bounce back from it a little bit and get back on. Man, I'm so sorry to hear that. Whoa. I need to get a newsletter list. Okay. You're on the newsletter list. I'll make sure you do. I just found out of a grand trine and a yod too. Never knew at 9:55. Well, there's always room for good news with that grand trine. Yods are interesting. I think there is something to yods, even though when I read Stephen Forrest's book, The Inner Sky, he kind of dismissed them. Oh, they're just 2 sextiles. Or I'm sorry, they're just 2 quincunxes. That's all they are. 2 quincunxes. Not a big deal. I think there's a there with yods. It's the focal point. It's always the focal point. And what you're trying to do is, bring this thing that is connected to the other part of the yod, trying to bring it into awareness. And sometimes that can be tricky. The focal point transits are always interesting. It's been kind of cool and rainy here. Barely had to water outside plants. We had some of that, but it's gotten hotter again. So I've got to deal with my garden, which has been good so far this year. Estevan Rodriguez. What's happening, Estevan? Good to have you here. Thank you. The People's Champ. I like that. The People's Champ. We're talking about Mike Tyson tonight. He's a Cancer. I don't know if Mike was ever the People's Champ. Mike Tyson's an interesting character. We're going to talk about him. Yeah, that's heavy, man. Veronica, get out of there. Jeez, Louise. I'm preparing for the next life living in Texas. Hell is hot. Yes, it is hot here. Let's see. Cancer here checking in. Don't forget, we have soul. What did I say? Come on now. Come on, Lynn. It's in the title. It's in the description. Flat Earth Hippie. Still cool here in California. 109 a few days, though. California. My favorite weather in California was probably when I was living in La Honda, Redwood City. Weather best by government test. San Diego had really nice weather too. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. Kelly B, what's happening, Kelly B? I guess the show can start now. Let's see. Who else do we have? The World of Bliss. Lisa, good to see you. Good to have you here. Mateo Eros. That's a cool name. I think the Sun just received a big, big new double A battery. Fuck yeah, the sun is cooking. You know, that's the whole thing, right? Like if you are into this idea that there are planets out there, and I do believe there are planets out there, okay? Whether they're in the firmament or they're luminaries, there are planets out there. And they are and have been showing that these planets are heating up. Jeez, how about that? Let's see. I thought it was TB. What's TB? TB. I recall the Moonchild and Cancer does not sound. Yeah, Cancer, just like if there's a sign that got ripped off with a name, it's Cancer. Maybe we could come up with a new name for Cancer. And we know it's a crab, but is there a cool crab out there? Let me see. Let me see if we got any cool crabs out there. Crab names. Let's see if there's any crab names, any cool crab names, so we can rebrand Cancer. Let's see. The crab species. Top crab names: Bait, Claude, Claudia, Claus, Crab Cake, Edward Scissorhands, Groucho. That's kind of appropriate for Cancer, Groucho, and Heidi. Well, these are names for hermit crabs. Let's see, crab name species. Those are for your hermit crabs. Crab species name. Let's see what we got here. The crab is the Brachyra family. Short for brachys. Brachys, tail, and aura. So the aura, here, I'll show you guys. Let's see if we can rebrand Cancer tonight. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see if we can rebrand Cancer. So Brachyura. Brachyura. So it is Greek terms for short, brachys, and tail, aura. So the aura is a tail. Brachyura. All right, so we have crab genus. Let's look at some of these genuses. Let's look at some of these genuses. Here we go. What's this? No, these are all very boring Latin names. Let's see. Crab animal facts, Brachyura. They belong to the phylum Arthropoda. Canceridae, that's the family. Canceridae, hence Cancer. There we go. There's Cancer, Linnaeus. Here we go. We're into the etymology of Cancer. Cancer is a genus of marine crabs in the Canceridae. It includes 8 extant species and 3 extinct species, including familiar crabs of the littoral zone, such as the European edible crab, Cancer pagurus, the Jonah crab, the red rock, that's Cancer borealis, the red rock crab, Cancer productus. It is thought to have evolved from related genera in the Pacific Ocean in the Miocene. That's the Miocene era. So here are some of our Cancerian friends. The toothed rock crab, also known as Cancer bellianus, the Jonah crab, Cancer borealis, Atlanta rock crab, Cancer iratus. Okay. The edible or brown crab, Cancer pagurus, the Chilean crab, Cancer plebijus. So they're all Cancer, right? So they all are in the taxonomic history of Cancer. When the zoological nomenclature was first standardized by Carl Linnaeus in 1758 in the 10th edition of the Systema Naturae, the genus Cancer included almost all the crustaceans, including all the crabs. Well, of course, the constellation of Cancer looks like a crab, hence the name. So we're kind of stuck with it, I think. Cancer has been restricted to one group of true crabs. By the time of Pierre-André Latreille's 1802 work, Histoire naturelle générale et particulière des crustacés et des insectes, the natural history in general, specifically of that of crustaceans and insects, they're related. They're related. In 1975, J. Dale Nations divided the genus Cancer into 4 subgenera: Cancer, Cancer globocarcinus, Cancer metacarcinus, and Cancer romelion. Each of these is now treated as a separate genus, as the genus Platypistoma, erected by Mary J. Rathburn and resurrected in 1991. Since that time, further genera have been described to accommodate species previously included in Cancer, and thus the genus Cancer now contains only 8 extant species. So there you go. What sign is Mr. Carl Linnaeus? Let's just figure that out for a second. May 23rd. Well, he's a Gemini, so of course he's going to be putting things into categories, right? The father of categorization is a Gemini. The father of taxonomy is a Gemini. Barely a Gemini. If I'm maybe, I don't know. Back then the signs change a little bit. Let me just do a quick observation here of that year 1707. Let me bring up my let's see, we're going to go 1800, because I am a Virgo and I do need to be as specific as possible. So we're going to go, let's go 1700. And when was he born again? Mr. Linnaeus, 1707. Let's look him up. Not his chart, but let's just see where the sun was on May 23rd, 1707. Normally it's Gemini, but these older designations, things don't always show up that way. Okay, so yeah, there we go. May 23rd, Gemini 1, Aquarius moon, and Mercury in Taurus direct, Venus in Aries. And guess what? He has Mars in Cancer. So Mr. Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus, has Mars in Cancer. There you go. Jupiter in Leo, Saturn in Gemini, conjunct the sun. He could put in those long, hard hours and work, classifying everything. Uranus in Leo, Neptune in Aries, and then Pluto in Leo. So a lot of Leo in the guy's chart. And True Node in Aries, Chiron in Capricorn. But we know that he's got Mars in Cancer. So I think we're left with the name. Like, I think we're stuck with the name. Obviously because of the constellation, right? We can't take it out because of the constellation. So maybe what we need to do is we need to redesignate Cancer, the thing that eats our bodies. So perhaps we can bring back consumption. Let's bring back consumption. Because if you think about it too, like what you consume can also lead to consumption. Clearly, too much sugar has been proven to feed cancer. So one of the things that people do when they're wanting to get rid of cancer is they get rid of sugar. They change their consumption. They alter their diet. So I'm all for bringing back consumption and allowing Cancer, the crab, the genus, the constellation remain intact. I will not attempt to alter the name. We're going to go in the other direction. You can have consumption back. Is that interesting though? Right? It's kind of like consumption was also connected to being a consumer. At a certain point, they're like, oh, we're going to teach. When I was a little kid, I remember being in grade school and they were talking about consumers and producers. So we're learning about all this when we're like in the second grade. So they would have an image of somebody that was making something, right? And you put in producer, and they'd have an image of somebody that was buying something or eating something, and you put in consumer. So we were schooled very early on production and consumption. And it seems to me that they didn't want to muddy the waters there with consumption. We'll just call it Cancer. Why don't we get into cancers. Let's find some fame. You know, I like to do this. So let's get into some famous cancers and see if we can find. So we just like to riff a little bit here and find some interesting patterns when you get to see the people that occupy a certain sign. And we'll get into kind of the designation of Cancer as an individual. So let's do, I like this one site, but I'm always blown away by how they rank people. Their rankings are, somebody behind the scene is taking the piss out of all this, and bringing some levity to the situation, because they have the number one ranked Cancer of all time is Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire's partner, and then Willie Sutton. Really? And then Dolly the sheep. Did you know Dolly the sheep, the first cloned sheep, was a Cancer? That's kind of interesting, actually. When you look at the symbol, right? The symbol is like one sort of interacting with the other. They're almost identical, which is kind of clony. Dolly the sheep. Yeah, Henry the Eighth. Yeah, he was a Cancer. He must have been just a pain in the fucking ass, right? He's trying his best to have all these kids and produce one male progeny, but get up on the wrong side of the bed with him that day. I bet he would be just a fucking pain in the ass. And then what does he do? Well, he winds up basically exterminating Thomas More, right? Because More would not grant him a divorce. I mean, this is a big thing. This is really what sets the Reformation of the church in place, because he's gonna convert. He's gonna become basically an Episcopal, right? That's what happens, and it's Henry VIII. He was a crabby Cancer, and he was just in such a bad mood because he couldn't father a male child, and that he decides that he's going to join forces with Martin Luther and the Protestants. So who knows? Maybe if he was a Gemini, he would have done it all kind of on the side. Mary Baker Eddy, who is one of the founders, I believe, another religion. Well, Henry VIII is not religious, but Mary Baker Eddy, Christian Science, right? Christian Science. And that you're not going to basically put shit in your body. Like, it's going to be natural stuff or nothing at all. Very interesting person and fairly mystical too. Here we go. John Jacob Astor. Now, the reason I'm bringing him up is because we talked about him yesterday on the show. Oh, not the show, I'm sorry, on the webinar. And I got into this kind of symbolism of the Titan, which was the kind of this weird sort of doppelganger of the Titanic. It's not really the Titanic, but it of course it meets a very ignominious end, if it indeed it actually happened. You know, I always have my doubts about certain events, but we'll say, for the sake of argument, that five relatively clueless people decided that they were going to use this, garage built sub and go down and cruise and visit the Titanic. Now, it wasn't the maiden voyage of this thing. It had done a number of other voyages, but I'm not sure it was they'd gone that deep. Anyway, so it brings up the Titanic. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday on the webinar was that the Titanic sunk on April 15th, 1912. A year later, we would have the Federal Reserve Act, and April 15th would be forever known from that day forward as tax day. So it's this really weird, the Titanic is this really weird event. And one of the things that is interesting also about the Titanic is that J.P. Morgan was the guy that was involved in the Titanic, but the Titanic was a number of other ships that were part of something called the White Star Line. And J.P. Morgan was attempting to dominate the shipping lines in the shipping lanes. He thought that if he could do that, that he would have a monopoly. He was looking to have essentially a maritime monopoly. And with the sinking of the Titanic, that put a huge dent into J.P. Morgan's monopoly, the ideas for monopolization. That said, one of the people who was on the Titanic was John Jacob Astor. He was on the Titanic, and he was one of the first of the kind of robber barons born Pluto and Aries. And this guy is going to go down, right? He is going to go down on the Titanic. Why did he go down? It's because he was against the Federal Reserve. He and two other people on board the Titanic. By the way, J.P. Morgan was supposed to be on the Titanic, but he wasn't. So you had three people, and one of whom who was a heavy-duty player. And guess what? He is in opposition to this character, John D. Rockefeller. And they both happen to be Cancers. Isn't that interesting? So when you look at the sign of Cancer, you can see that on the one hand, you have Rockefeller, who had his arm twisted by the Rothschilds to support the Federal Reserve and to support taxation, right? To support fiat lending. And then you had John Jacob Astor, who would have been one of the other sort of zygotes there in the yin yang model of the Cancerian symbolism, and he's not. He's gone, right? So he's a very interesting character, and he pops up as part of this dichotomy. Phyllis Diller, oh my God, Cancer. The aforementioned John D. Rockefeller, who, by the way, was a naturopath all the way. But what does he do? He cranks up the medical industrial complex, and they start to use all these bizarre machines to make people better. The iron lung, of course, being one of them. Diana Spencer, Lady Diana, Lady Di, Cancer, gave birth to a Cancer son with William, who's a Cancer. You'll see him here in a minute. All right. So we have George W. Bush. He's a Cancer with a Leo rising sun in the 12th house. I mentioned this with, who else was it? Who did I look at who had sun in the 12th house recently? We have Biden, who has sun in the 12th house. You have Putin, who has sun in the 12th house. You have Hillary Clinton, who has sun in the 12th house. There's something about people that have sun in the 12th house on a political level that allows them to be effective. You know, they're able to make these backdoor deals. They're always doing things behind the scenes with sun in the 12th house. By the way, I'm not referring to my good friend, David, the Leo King Palmer, who has sun in the 12th house. I would never put him in this category. However, he has stated that he did want to run for president at some point in time, which means that his sun in the 12th house might actually be put to good use. Well, maybe better use than these other people who have sun in the 12th house. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, sun in the 12th house. Edward Heath. I'm sorry, Michael Phelps, a Cancer. I don't know where his son. Julius Caesar, a crabby fellow, if there ever was one. Julius Caesar, Cancer. Here's what you're going to find with Cancer. You're going to find more boxers. Like, there are a lot of boxers who are Taurus and Aries, but you're going to find a lot of Cancerian boxers. You're going to find some gangsters that are Cancers as well. So you have Jack Dempsey. And what's interesting about Dempsey is, hey, he really fits the Cancerian mold. You know, there was rumors that Dempsey would put he'd put concrete in his between his gloves and his fists, and he would put his hands in the gloves with this is dried concrete now, and he would soak his gloves, like his hands were like this, right? And he would soak his gloves in water, which is very Cancerian, and they would dry. And the concrete, again, now this is kind of a rumor, but they would dry, and he would have hands of concrete, which is very Cancerian, right? Especially with that big right. And maybe it'd just be one. I don't know, but I heard it was both. So that fits the Cancer model. Elon Musk, of course, is a Cancer. I think Elon might have Sun in the 12th house as well, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Tyson, Cancer. So why do boxers show up as Cancer? That's an interesting question. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that boxing isn't just offensive, but it's defensive. You have to counter, you have to parry, right? This is how boxing works. It's not just let me just pummel. And this is where Mike Tyson ultimately got into trouble. Mike Tyson was a pummeler. And the thing that made Mike Tyson really effective was that he was a fighter. Now, he's a student of boxing. Don't get me wrong. Mike Tyson's watched way more boxing than I've ever seen. Okay. But when he started off, he was a fighter and he was essentially running off of this rage that Jimmy Jacobs and Cruz D'Amato had channeled. Mike Tyson was full of rage and fury, and they channeled it. But once he got beat, once Buster Douglas punched him out, and then once Mike, and I think Mike got run up on some bum charges around Desiree Washington. And I'm not the only one. Donald Trump used to come out and defend Mike Tyson around the whole rape thing. And I think Mike got me too'd. And then what happened is that once he went into prison, he became a better person, but he became a worse boxer. The rage was gone. Right. It was a very Cancerian thing. And that's how Cancers operate. Cancer is a cardinal sign. And once Cancers discharge their frustration or discharge their bitterness, and these are two things that Cancers have to watch out for, is bitterness and frustration. But once they discharge it, they're kind of done. Right. It's like, okay, it's a cardinal sign. And once the discharge happens, they're kind of done until it builds up again, because that's how Cancer operates, right? It's like a building water tank, and then it has to discharge. So once Tyson, discharged most of his rage and fury and wound up being in prison for a while, became a better person, worse boxer. He was kind of done, right? He was kind of done. And the thing about Mike Tyson is that he's really an anomaly in that he fought people. He was heavyweight champion during a time where, I'm just going to say this, there wasn't a lot of competition. I mean, eventually when the competition came around, Tyson was in a very different phase of his life, a different phase of his career. And, he had Evander Holyfield, kind of whoop his ass more than one occasion. So Mike didn't have to box. He didn't have to box. I mean, he just destroyed people. And had he been in a different time, in a different era where he had to really, really box some tremendous fighters, he probably would have busted out some of those skills, because I don't think he was a terrible boxer. He just didn't have to do it. But then when the time came and he had to do it, the fight was out of him. So we're going to see more boxers here coming up. Nelson Mandela, he's a Cancer. It's so funny. Yeah, I wish I had a Mandela effect joke. So I remember Nelson Mandela was a Gemini. Remember that? I thought he was a Gemini. No, he's got a Cancer-looking face, though. Ariana Grande, she's a Cancer. Who else do we have here? Liv Tyler, Cancer. I had a Liv Tyler Joaquin Phoenix moment one time. It was a funny night. I was at the opening of the Virgin Megastore in New York City. I saw some weird shit that night, some really weird shit. Some of it had to do with Richard, what's his name? The guy who started Virgin Records, Richard Branson. But Liv Tyler this is when she was dating Joaquin Phoenix. And her and Joaquin Phoenix is not very tall, by the way. I think Liv Tyler's about 5'8". Joaquin Phoenix, I think, is 5'8". So they were together. Remember that? They were together. And they were walking around this opening for the Virgin Megastore. I don't know why they were there. Maybe it was a cool party. Maybe they were friends with Sean Lennon, who was playing that night. Maybe they were friends with Natalie Merchant. Who knows? But they were walking together, and they were arm in arm, like some, like literally locked arm in arm, like some Victorian couple. And they were in this bubble. Nobody messed with them. Nobody talked with them. But they would just walk. They were just walking around going, It was so weird. Like, like, good day, good evening. And it was a very Cancerian kind of modality, right? They were like locked together. She was bolted into Joaquin Phoenix's arm. And they were it was like they were in their own little fishbowl in a lot of ways. And nobody messed with them, but it wasn't like they were being uppity or arrogant, like they were interacting with people. But clearly there was like a bubble over them. It was fascinating to watch. We got George Michael, who's a Cancer. Orville Redenbacher, man, Cancer. Like this guy is like really key in Cancerian kinds of activities in your home. You're at home, you're doing Netflix and chill. It's a Cancer thing. What are you doing? You're popping out some Redenbacher. That's what you're doing. And he's very American. In fact, he's fucking corny, right? Like Orville Redenbacher is so American and so nerdy, he's corny. And I think you get some of this with Cancer. Let's see, what else do we have here? Henry David Thoreau. His mom had to kick him out. Get the fuck out of here. Go live down there, down by that pond. See that Walden Pond down there? Go live down there for a while. Get the fuck out of my house. Okay? Maybe you'll find yourself. You'll see gangsters like John Dillinger. He's a Cancer. Look at him. He's got fucking killer eyes. Who else? Somebody else up here was a gangster too. Who was it? George W. Bush. That guy's a gangster. Jack Dempsey's not a gangster, but he looks like one. John D. Rockefeller's definitely a gangster. Let's see. Who else do we have? Ringo Starr, Cancer. This guy, I'm going to go on record. Ringo Starr has had the best post-Beatles life. Hasn't he? He's had the best fucking post-Beatles life. Nobody ever questions whether or not that's the same Ringo. You get that all the time with Paul McCartney. George Harrison nearly got stabbed to death in his house. John Lennon, we believe he got killed by Mark David Chapman. What does Ringo Starr do? He just tours forever. He's touring right now. And he married the beautiful Barbara Bach. I would say if there was one winner out of the Fab Four, it's got to be Ringo, without a doubt. Tom Hanks, Cancer. We're going to skip over him. Who else do we have? Tom Cruise, couple of Toms. Tom Cruise, born on the 4th of July, right? Born on the 4th of July. He's about as American as it gets. We did a whole breakdown of Tom Cruise one time. Arthur Ashe, Benazir Bhutto, the lovely Benazir Bhutto, who unfortunately was assassinated, politically assassinated. Arthur Ashe, great tennis player, died of AIDS. Blood transfusion. He was cool, though. Arthur, what I loved about Arthur Ashe? Number one, he was a good tennis player, but the dude was classy. He was a classy dude. And, died like way before his time. Who else? O.J. Simpson is a Cancer. Of course he is. Of course. So famous story, but Cancers are sensitive people. They're very sensitive people. And one time OJ, kind of at the height of his OJ popularity during the 70s, maybe early 80s, he was in Paris and nobody knew who he was. And it fucking pissed him off. It was like, these fucking French people, they don't know who I am. He's sensitive. He's a Cancer. What do you expect? Ernest Hemingway, Cancer. Gerald Ford, also know his real name? Leslie King. That's not even his real fucking name. He's a gangster. He's a total pervert. Shows up in Kathy O'Brien's Transformation of America. If you know anything about Kathy O'Brien, you know what he's doing there. Robin Williams, Cancer. So some people say that he was eliminated, that it was not a cocaine overdose. He was eliminated. Julian Assange. When you think of Julian Assange hanging out in the, the Ecuadorian embassy for who fuck knows how long. If he was really there, we'll just, for shits and giggles, he's there. That's a very Cancerian thing, right? He just holed up. And I saw some pictures apparently of what his room looked like in the Ecuadorian embassy. It looked like a hovel. I mean, again, if you can believe the pictures, but it's a very Cancerian thing. right? He's a crab and he dug in. Who else do we have? Janet Leigh, Alexander the Great. Wow. So we have Alexander the Great. We have Julius Caesar, both cancers. So listen, the good news is that if you have a son and they're a cancer, they can still wind up like Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar. But then again, maybe they'll end up like O.J. Simpson. But that's good. That's aspirational. Oh, you got Ferdinand von Zeppelin, and you have Lord Mountbatten. These are some very, very important people. Who else do we have? Sonny Liston and Ezra Charles, both boxers. They're both boxers. Again, boxing, lead Perry, right? Lead Perry. It's a very Cancerian sport in a lot of ways, right? Even like hanging in there, you're kind of wobbling and getting the shit beat out of you, right? That's what cancers do. They hang in there. Tobey Maguire, who I think is the worst fucking Spider-Man. I'm sorry. I'm not into emo Spider-Man. By the time the third one rolled around, I just wanted him to give Mary Jane over to one of the super villains. Please take the bitch. Okay? Take the whiny alcoholic bitch. She can't handle my Spider-Man, my Spider-Man-isms. Okay? Just take her. Please. No. Oh, Mary Jane, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to your performance. I was too busy saving the world. And she would scold him for it. Finally, the Tom Hiddleston guy. Was that his name? The latest Spider-Man? I love that kid. I love that kid. I love that version of Spider-Man. But I guess if you're going to play Spider-Man and you're going to make him an emo guy, it may as well be Tobey Maguire. He could go through all of his moods and feelings as Spider-Man. My God. We have the explorer Roald Amundsen, Selena Gomez with a Cancer, and we have two feminists, Meryl Streep and Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart actually describes himself as a feminist. Ezra Charles, Sonny Liston. Boy, Sonny Liston. That's an interesting combination. When you get into Liston and Ali, formerly Cassius Clay, Capricorn, Liston, Cancer, right? And the Phantom Punch. And Sonny Liston was never the same after that. Interesting that Liston but you know what? Sonny Liston was the Mike Tyson of his day. He was this beast, right? He had this big knockout punch. Like Sonny Liston was like the Undertaker of boxing. So both Liston and Tyson kind of fall into the same camp. Who else do we have here? We got Frida Kahlo, Cancer. John Quincy Adams, Cancer. Angela Merkel, Cancer. Is she even still around? She never says a fucking thing. And all she does is this. And I don't know what's going on with her. 50 Cent, who has been psychically castrated by what's her name? Chelsea Handler, his handler. Prince Wills is a Cancer. Tesla, a Cancer. Look at that. The question is, did he even really invent anything? Or in a more typical Cancerian fashion, did he repurpose the things that he found? Question mark. Yul Brynner, a Cancer, and of course he died from cancer. The Dalai Lama, did you know he was a Cancer? He certainly is. Speaking of boxers, there's Sylvester Stallone. Rocky. Now that is a Cancerian fucking story, right? He's American. He's a man of the people. And he's in Philadelphia, which is the birthplace of the United States, which of course is a Cancer country. He hangs on, right? He hangs on. Based on Chuck Wepner. Meyer Lansky, gangster, Cancer. See another gangster. Harrison Ford. You know what? Here's true confession. I've never liked Harrison Ford. Never. I kind of liked him maybe a little bit in the first Star Wars. And then, what's interesting? It's like you have instincts about people. You have instincts. I had instincts. I don't like this guy. And guess what? Politically, He's come out and said a bunch of shit. And guess what? He's actually reaffirmed my dislike of him. So I was right. My instincts were on with Harrison Ford. Meyer Lansky, of course, a Cancer. Who else have? Carl Lewis, who had one of the strangest renditions of the national anthem I've ever heard. Carl, great sprinter, Cancer. Ammar Lindbergh, Cancer. Calvin Coolidge, one of the greatest presidents of all time. You know why? Because he was a true Cancer. He was a non-interventionist. He was a guy that was into balancing the budget. Like when he was president, there was not a lot of expenditures going on there. Not a lot of expenditures. He lost one of his sons while he was president. His son got injured, I believe, doing something athletic. It got worse and worse and worse. And Calvin Coolidge took over. I think it was for, who was it? Was it Taft? And and then he got reelected. And he could have been elected for another term, but he decided not to run. So he ran once, and he kept us out of NATO. Not NATO, the League of Nations, which was the first version of the UN. To me, this guy right here was one of the greatest presidents of all time. Like, I had to go back. I went through a journey. And I looked at all these presidents. Like, okay, well, what was this guy about? What was this guy about? And I looked at even who they were running against. Like, could there have been a better person? Could Thomas Dewey have been a better president than Harry Truman? And when I looked at Dewey and his, platform and record, not really. And I think Truman was a terrible president, but he wouldn't have been a better president. I had to go all the way back to Coolidge. And then I read about Coolidge. I'm like, this was our guy. This was the last great American president right here. Maybe we tried the Cancer president with George Bush. That didn't really work, did it? And Gerald Ford didn't really work. Who else do we have? Mel Brooks, Cancer. Jose Canseco, Cancer. There was one time when I was back in my early journalist days, I managed to get an interview with Bruce Bochy, who was a first baseman for the Oakland A's. And the thing I liked about Bruce Bochy was he was like a bit of an environmentalist back when being an environmentalist was cool. And he was into sustainability when sustainability was not a con job. And I thought, oh, Bruce Bochy, he's interesting. He's smart. So I managed to get an interview with him. And I think the press person for the Oakland A's allowed me to get in. And so I walked through the clubhouse. I was in the clubhouse later on, years after, but I walked through the clubhouse for the first time, and Canseco was in there, and he was strutting around the clubhouse like he was God. And if you knew Jose Canseco or saw his body and frame, you would say that he had bragging rights. Like Jose Canseco, after he discovered steroids in the minor leagues, was a fucking titan. He was around 6'3". He was my height, but this guy was just chiseled, right? And his nickname, they called him the Natural, even though it was ironic because how he got there was very unnatural. But he was a beast, man. And I'll tell you what was the turning point of Jose Canseco's career. It was the death of his mother, cancer, right? Now, I don't know if she had cancer or not. She might have, but she died. And Canseco, who was a kind of a borderline prospect out of Miami, just decided that he was going to go on steroids. That's when it started. And then I think he played winter ball somewhere and got beefed up. And the next thing you know, he's playing in Huntsville and he's just knocking the shit out of the ball. And he's up with the A's. So he's a Cancer, and the death of his mother, cancer, motivated him to say, fuck it. I'm going to do steroids and I'm going to knock the shit out of the ball. Bill Haley in the comments looking very Cancerian and moon-faced. Bill Cosby, Cancer, boy. Camille Parker Bowles. What did Prince Charles say about him? I wish I was your underwear. Isn't that odd? P.T. Barnum, there's a sucker born every minute. Cancer. What's interesting about Barnum is, of course, Ringling Brothers, and the three ring circus. And when I think of Cancer, I do think of rings and interlocking rings. It's almost like you see the interlocking sign itself, right? Who else do we have? Let's do one more page. There's a lot of them here. Let's do another page. Virginia Wade, Cancer. Helen Keller was a Cancer. Did you know that? George Steinbrenner, born on the same day. Well, maybe not the same exact day, but shares the same birthday as Al Davis, two of the more controversial owners in professional sports. June Carter Cash, Cancer. The Hoff, David Hasselhoff, Cancer. George Orwell, Cancer. Sir Edmund Hillary. You would think he'd be a Capricorn, right? Somebody who climbs a bunch of mountains. First guy theoretically on Mount Everest, Cancer. George M. Cohen, Yankee Doodle Dandy guy, Cancer. E.B. White, Cancer. Who else do we have? We have two Rockefellers. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So you had Gerald Ford as a Cancer, and you had Nelson Rocky Rockefeller as a Cancer. So there you have the interlocking Cancers, right? You have the two of them together. And really, Nelson Rockefeller was running the White House, and everybody fucking knows that. And then, of course, his grandfather, a Cancer. Interesting. Dan Aykroyd, I knew he was a Cancer. Robert Evans, the producer, Cancer. Ili Nastasi, another tennis player. Linda Ronstadt, the lovely Linda Ronstadt, Cancer. Let's see, who else do we have here? There's Al Davis, Cancer. Susan Hayward, Cancer. Richard Petty. Richard Petty's still around. He's a Cancer. The late, great Alex Trebek, Cancer. Ashley Tisdale, Cancer. George Eastman of Eastman Kodak, Cancer. Cecil Rhodes, the Rhodes Scott. Jimmy Cagney, who played a gangster many times, also a Cancer. The lovely Christy McVie, Christine Perfect, Cancer. We got Chris Pratt, Cancer. A couple of Chris's here. We got Chris Pratt, who's the other one? Chris O'Donnell. Robin. He was Robin, wasn't he? Chris Pratt, Cancer. Who else? Susan Wojcicki. Apparently, Susan Wojcicki's son is into like the truther channels on YouTube. That's what I've heard. And so she's no longer that. She doesn't run YouTube anymore. I don't know who does. Imelda Marcos, Cancer, took over for her husband, Neil Simon, the playwright. Let's see who else we have here. Babe Didrikson Zaharias. I always thought Babe Didrikson Zaharias was a dude. Just saying. Felt a little dude like Pablo Neruda, the great poet, very soulful. Cancer. Olivia de Havilland, the beautiful Olivia de Havilland, Cancer. Jean-Paul Sartre, the great existential. Lizzie Borden, Cancer. Boy, she must have woken up in the wrong side of the bed one day, right? Bad mood. John Elway, Cancer. Let's see who else. Milton Berle, Cancer. Post Malone. Apparently this guy's really talented. Apparently he's really talented. This thing, I just don't. It's like he, doesn't like himself. I just think that whenever you really go into like tattooing your face and stuff, you're really trying to hide something. Just my 2 cents. Let's see what Toby Keith, Cancer. Yes, he's very Americana, isn't he? Benedict Cumberbatch, Cancer. Who else do we have? John Leguizamo. Whatever happened to that guy? He was really funny. Courtney Love, of course, she's a Cancer. She got involved with the Pisces. The turbulent, stormy seas of Kurt and Courtney. Cancer and Pisces. Who else do we have? Henry Ford Sinclair, Franz Kafka. So Frida Kahlo and Franz Kafka. Kafka, look at him. He looks like a rodent. Another boxer, Leon Spinks, and Leon Spinks lost to Mike Tyson. Satchel Paige hung around for a long time, Cancer. Sebastian Vettel, race car driver, Cancer. Tom Shopper, Carlos Santana, my man Pete Maravich, Cancer. Santana, you ever seen Santana lately? I mean, the guy kind of, I think something happened to him, with the old, and he had to cancel his tour, but he still looks pretty good for his age, I have to say. Okay, let's do one more page. I think we're on a bit of a roll here. Bill Withers, soulful. There's your soulful expression of Cancer right there. You got some Cancerian beauties here: Angelica Houston, Sofia Vergara, Jessica Simpson. And then we got Pam Anderson. Oh, look at that. Richard Branson, Cancer. Of course he is. Of course he's a Cancer. All right, Herman Hesse, Cancer. Giselle Bündchen, Capricorn rising. Joe Sakic, the hockey player, Cancer. Who else do we have? Jake LaMotta, another boxer. Lots of boxers. Again, it is the Jab and Perry. Cat Stevens, Cancer. Chris Isaac. Chris Isaac. Chris Isaac also, besides being a musician, was a boxer. He was a boxer. Really interesting. Gustav Mahler, the Cancer. Richard Lewis. Oh my God. Richard Lewis looks like death warmed over now. Guess what Richard Lewis is into? Boxing. Big boxing fan. Student of the sweet science, as they call it. Kevin Hart, Cancer. Let's see, who else do we have here? Anybody else? Ross Perot. That was a guy that probably wouldn't have been a bad president. He would have been like a Calvin Coolidge-like president. And they got to him. They got to Ross Perot. They were like, yeah. I remember when the air came out of that candidacy. The people loved him, and he had all the right values, but they didn't want to listen to him, and didn't work out too well. What's interesting about Ariana Huffington is that at one point in time, she was a conservative. Right? And I think what she did is she went to the other kind of Cancerian polarity and went all in on the other side of the ledger sheet there. Who else do we have? Vin Diesel is a Cancer. Of course he is. Sidney Pollack, Cancer. Sandra Oh, Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy. Who else? Mick Fleetwood. Oh, so Mick Fleetwood and Chrissy McVie, both Cancers. All right. I see you. Conor McGregor, another fighter. Cancer. Derek Jeter is such a Cancer. The most instinctual baseball play I've ever seen, maybe the most instinctual athletic play I've ever seen, was Derek Jeter. And I'm a big A's fan. And it was when the New York Yankees were playing the Oakland A's in the playoffs. And it looks like the A's were going to fucking finally beat these guys. And it was, whatchamacallit, Jason Giambi's brother. And Jeremy Giambi. And he was rounding third, and all he had to fucking do was slide. But what happened is that the throw came in from right field. I think who was playing right field? Was it Paul O'Neill? The throw comes in from right field, and Derek Jeter is in a place where he's not supposed to be on the field. Like, he's not supposed to be between right field and the catcher. Like, he's not supposed to be there. And yet he's there. And he takes the ball, catches it, and with one hand, right, he brings it in and flips the ball behind him to home plate. The catcher gets it and tags Jeremy Giambi out. He might have been safe. But Jeremy, if you just fucking slid, you would have been safe. I've never seen a play, the closest I've seen to a play like that was, I think it might have been Kawhi Leonard. Maybe Joe Montana to Dwight Clark. That's in that category, the catch. But it's funny because Kawhi Leonard's a Cancer, and you know what his nickname is? The Claw. Isn't that funny? The Claw. But no, that Jeter play was the most instinctual play. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it. He was ahead of time. It was mind-blowing. But that's how Cancer operates. When Cancer is humming, man, they're in the right place at the right time, and they're totally instinctual. Oh, look, Larry David. We did our thing on him a couple of weeks ago. Of course, he's a grouchy fucking Cancer. Crabby Cancer. Clyde Drexler. It was his birthday the other day. Cancer. John Calvin. Of course, he's a Cancer. David Brinkley, reaching into the heart of America. Cancer. Andre Dawson, whose nickname was the Hawk. He's a Cancer. Maybe they should call him the Crab. Canelo Alvarez, another boxer. Cancer. How about that? Stephen Foster, of course, the Star Spangled Banner. Americana. Cancer. Ricky Gervais. You know, I saw Ricky Gervais getting the fucking vaccination. Changed my entire opinion of Ricky Gervais. Jimmy Johnson. Cancer. Jerry Jones is a Libra. What do? They cross square. Bob Dole, you could have been a Cancerian president. You ran a couple times. Unfortunately, not that exciting. Mendel, the guy, you know, the geneticist, Cancer. Mike Ilitch, former owner of the Detroit Tigers, Cancer. Another tennis player, Margaret Court Smith, Cancer. Willis Reed, the great Willis Reed, Cancer. Ingmar Bergman, the director, very Cancerian, very moody director. Featured women a lot. Cancer. Brock Lesnar, the wrestler, the football player, the MMA guy, another fighter. Cancer. Hunter S. Thompson. Cancer. Forrest Whitaker. Clarence Thomas. Cancer. Ray Davies of the Kinks. Cancer. See, you're learning your Cancerian people. Let's do one more page. Let's finish this out. Who else do we have here? Ralph Schumacher, Nancy Reagan. Nancy Reagan, you know what Nancy Reagan was known for? Right there. Cancers have sometimes an oral fixation. Just saying. Missy Elliott. Why? It's the breast. Just saying. Missy Elliott, Cancer. I like Missy Elliott. She's very talented. Rune Arledge, Cancer. Lindsay Lohan, Cancer. Who else do we have? Anybody interesting? We're getting down here at the bottom of the list. Louis B. Mayer, I was reading about him today. Apparently, he was a total asshole. Oh, look, Barack Obama. Barack Obama's a Cancer. Isn't that interesting? Snowden and Assange are both Cancers. There's a lot of Gemini in those charts, too. We talked about Liz Warren the other day. Same day as Dianne Feinstein. Same day as Adam Schitt. Megan Rapinoe, she's crabby, isn't she? She's totally crabby. We don't make enough. We need to be paid as much as men. Art Modell, the most hated man in Cleveland, pretty much. He's a Cancer. And Vitaly Klitschko, another boxer, and we've come to the end of our Cancerian deep dive. Interesting group of people. I'm sure some of these people will show up when we get into the star of the day on Astro Weather, which I actually do Tuesday through Thursday right here on this channel at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. If you haven't found Astro Weather, you might enjoy it. We look at the astrology of the day, and we look at the star of the day. It's usually one of these people that we're kind of going over here in real time. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break for just a brief minute. I need to turn the lights on here because it's going to get dark. And the last time I did this, I got hit like in real time. Like YouTube was like censoring me in real fucking time about, you're breaking, you're having a copyright infringement here. Let me see if I can find something that's not copyright infringement territory. What do I want to do? something that's going to be, I don't know, outside of what? Copyright restriction territory. Let me see what I can find. What can I do? All right, here we go. Let's do this. All right. Let me just see what we got here. Hold on one second. Yeah, there's a lot of science fiction movies that are coming out. Got some trailers here. Even the trailers, I can get in trouble for. I'm just trying to find something that is. Let me see this. What is this? Let's see. Can they get me for this? I don't know if they can or not. 1 year ago. Hold on a second. Let's do that. I'm just looking around here. All right. How about this? I'm going to try this one. This is it's called Man in Mars. I have no idea what it's about. Hollywood Hindi dubbed movie. Let's see if YouTube has an answer for this one. Let's do this. Here we go. All right, someone play this, and I have no clue what it's about. This is just filler for about a minute while I turn the lights on, get something to drink. If you wanted to use the bathroom, you can go ahead. But let's just play this thing, see what happens. हम अभी 11.5 degrees पर हैं. Ready to go on your command. Ready to launch. Commander, मैं आपके मुंह से सुनना चाहता हूँ लॉन्च करें या नहीं. लॉन्च.
आज सुबह करीब 4:30 बजे हमारे सैटेलाइट ने एक तूफान का पता लगाया था जो एरीज 3 की मिशन साइट की तरफ बढ़ रहा था. 6:45 बजे तूफान और भयंकर हो गया और मिशन को रद्द करने के अलावा और कोई चारा नहीं था हमारे पास. कमांडर लुइस ने वक्त पर सही फैसला लिया. एस्ट्रोनॉट बेक, योहानसन, मार्टिनेज और वोगल मार्स असेंट व्हीकल तक पहुंचने में कामयाब रहे और 7:28 पर उन्होंने एक इमरजेंसी लॉन्च किया. बदकिस्मती से वहां से निकलने के दौरान एस्ट्रोनॉट मार्क वॉटनी से मलबा टकराया और उनकी मौत हो गई. कमांडर लुइस और उनकी बाकी की टीम हर्मीज पर सुरक्षित तरह से चढ़ पाए और अब वो घर की तरफ लौट गए हैं. लेकिन मार्क वॉटनी अब नहीं रहे.
And we're back. Uh-oh. Mark Watney is dead. Oh, well. All right. Thanks for being here. Got the lights set up. I've got my Zevia Cola We're ready to go. Why don't we take a look at the chart of the moment? Let's see where we are astrologically. And thanks for diving in to a little bit of the Cancerian personae, as it were. Okay, so while I'm doing this, why don't we talk about the qualities of Cancer that I think are like the strong points of the sign? Okay. The qualities of Cancer that I think are the strong points are loyalty. It is a loyal sign. If you happen to have a Cancer person in your life as a partner, they are loyal. That would include Cancer rising as well, by the way. Like they're loyal people. Let me see what else we have here. Oh yeah, I guess we could do that. They're loyal people. They're loyal. They're soulful. They're caring. Right? If you have a Cancer on your side, they will do what they're here to do, which is nurture and care. Cancers, I would say, by and large, are the best maternal potential. Cancer, and we can spread that across the zodiacal planet. Cancer rising, Cancer moon, although maybe a bit overprotective with the moon. Just saying. Cancer rising, Cancer moon, Venus and Cancer. Don't sleep on Venus and Cancer. Venus and Cancer is like really sensual, right? The whole thing with Cancer is that it has a reciprocal energy. So if somebody has strong Cancer in their chart, and it comes to things like intimacy and sexuality and sensuality, I think Cancer is really underrated. Very, very underrated, because they have the ability to recycle the flow of the energy between two people. Now, I would say that I know a little bit about that because I have Mars in Cancer, and I wouldn't be lying if I didn't, you know, share that with you, because that's my experience. But I also have seen this with other people in other charts, and that's how Cancer operates, right? The challenge with Cancer is that if they're not into it, it's hard to get them into it. That's the nature of it, right? It's like, okay, once they get warmed up, once safety can also be a big part of this with Cancer. Cancer is a sign that needs to feel safe. So if there's safety and security, there is deeper intimacy. Like that's how it goes. That's how it rolls. That's how Cancer will give themselves over to another person. If they are not feeling safe and they're not feeling secure, they won't come out of their shell, right? It's like I mean, they can, but you're not getting the best of them. So if you're in a relationship, and especially if you're a man and you're in a relationship with a Cancer woman, and they have any, and I'm sorry, we're going man woman here. I'm just for the sake of discussion. If you're a man and you're in a relationship with a Cancer woman, your job is to help that woman feel safe and secure. You do that work with a Cancer woman, and she will be loyal and devoted, and she will give up her life force for you. Okay, but you've got to do that though. You have to create that ground, and that ground can be anything. It could be a house, like like if you're a dude and you were the Cancer woman, they're better when they're in a house that they own versus a rental property. It's just the way it is. You'll get more of them as a result of that. Why? Because they're always, thinking about, well, is this a permanent place? And maybe if you have Mercury in Cancer, you might be able to put your home on your back. But so it's really important. So ownership is kind of a big deal. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So if you're a guy and you have a Cancer woman in your life, you provide a sense of security, and that woman will be amazing. I know it's kind of cliche, but they'll garden, they'll do all the Cancerian things that a woman who is, has strong Cancerian elements will do. If you're a man you're a Cancer man and you're in a relationship with a Cancer man, one of the things that you have to deal with, I think, more because we know that women are emotional and they're given over to their mood sometimes. It's just the way it is, right? Men and women are wired differently. Cancer men tend to be emotional, but they show their emotion differently. You know, Cancer men can be a bit gruff. They can be a bit, at times, acerbic. There's an acerbic quality to a Cancer man. I mean, look at Hunter S. Thompson. You don't get much more acerbic than Hunter S. Thompson. So you have to deal with the man's moods. If you're a woman, you're dealing with a Cancer man, right? If you're a Cancer man, then you have to be able to work through your moods, you know. And a Cancer man is the thing about Cancer is it's on or off, right? It's not as binary as Gemini, but it is kind of binary. It's kind of on or off. And if Cancer is on, it's great. And if it's off, it's like just leave them alone. So if you are involved with a Cancer man and he's kind of being moody, just leave him alone. He'll come out of his shell. But if you want to help him out of his shell, make a really good meal, because a Cancer man cannot resist a good meal. It'll pass, right? That if you have a Cancer child, or like he's a boy, Cancer boy, and he's moody, just let it go. It'll pass, right? That's the nature of Cancer, cyclical, tidal. That's who they are. That's who they are. So it's different and Cancer men are very handy. They're super handy. Like if you're a woman and you're married to a Cancer guy, you know, count your blessings, because I have not met a Cancer man who was not good at fixing shit. And sometimes it's mechanical shit. Sometimes it's things around the house. Sometimes it can be tech related. But trust me, these men like to do things with their hands, and they're usually pretty good at it. Just like on the flip side with women, they can be really good with their hands. Things like sewing and cooking. And Cancer is also a sign that I think is great for caretaking. And it goes without saying that some of the best nurses are Cancer, because they're able to bring kind of the best of both worlds together. They can be feeling, and they could also be sort of tactical and good with their hands and do things that are essential in terms of caretaking. I think dental assistants would be great in terms, again, of being Cancerian, right? Because that's one of the things with Cancer is that there's elements of minutia involved with Cancer, and being able to kind of, you know, delve into things and use tools in ways that are highly skilled. So those are some of the strong attributes of Cancer: loyalty and family and memory. Cancers, if you're involved with a Cancer, they got memories, okay? They will not forget a fucking thing. If you're involved with a Cancer man or woman, especially a Cancer woman, you better remember specific dates. That goes for Cancer rising too. You better remember specific dates, like the first date you went out, the first, you know, your anniversary. These are family stuff. You got to remember this stuff, because this is the one thing that the Cancerian world kind of turns on, is that if you don't remember, they will make a big deal out of it. They may pout. They may go radio silent, right? That's just how they roll. So they remember. So remember that they remember. And if you remember that they remember, and say, oh, yeah, do you remember this is the day that we went out and you made fun of my shirt, right? Oh, yeah, you were so cute. You look like such a dork, but I still loved you. That's how they roll. That's how Cancers roll. They're, again, extremely, the downside of Cancer can be bitterness. And it's one of those signs where it's sandwiched between Gemini and Leo. Think about that for a second. All right. Just if it's a family alignment, when I say family, we're talking about astrological family. Cancer's like the middle child. You know, Leo is, hey, you know, I'm firstborn. Hey, you know, look at me. Look at me, Jack. I'm the firstborn. I'm the son. I'm the sun king. Then you get Cancer, And then after Cancer, you get Gemini. Gemini's that cute, precocious little kid, little brother or sister that you fucking hated when they were born. Okay. And it's like, oh, come on. I thought I was that one. I thought I was her or I was him. That's Cancer. Cancer's like the middle child because it's sandwiched between Leo and Gemini. What do you get? You get taciturn, little moody there, a little crabby, right? So I think it's a very underrated sign. Cancers are good with money. They're really good with money. And sometimes they can be a little, and I've said this before, they can be a little on the thrifty side, if you know what I mean. They count the coins. There's no sign that counts the coins more than Cancer. And I'll never forget. I can say this now because he's passed away. But I knew this guy. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to gossip. But I'm going to tell you the story. I knew this guy. And he was very well known in sort of the San Francisco digital media scene. And he was the type of person that could get you hyped about an idea, get people who were kind of green but talented, and have them plug into his projects and not pay them. He was great at that. And he was a Cancer. And over time, I kind of began to resent it a little bit, right? I began to resent it. And I remember I was part of this company and I managed to get an advance. It wasn't just me, it was somebody else. It was back in the digital music days. And I managed to get an advance for this guy who would then have a relationship with these other labels. He'd bring the labels in, and it was like a virtual label. He got an advance, and it was not an insignificant advance, by the way. And I was sort of there to help. Again, I'd known him before I had started this job, and I had a relationship with this dude. And we were already on, how would I say this, sort of the cheapskate side of the relationship. All right, I'm just being honest here. So I remember he got this advance, and we went out, we had dinner afterwards. And I remember sitting down with him, and I'm like kind of instrumental in this. And I think it was close to 3 figures. That's how much. And I knew that this guy was going to use that money for, let's just say, more personal ends. And at the end of our dinner, and it wasn't even an expensive dinner, it was like some Thai restaurant or something. He said, "Do you want to split the tab?" And I almost kicked the fucking table over. I'm sorry. It's like, dude, you just got almost 6 figures of cash that was never going to show up in your life. And I was kind of the conduit. And now you're going to split the fucking check with me? And I told him that. I basically said, look, Michael, you're a cheap bastard. Pick up the check, buy dinner. I told him that, and he did. But it was like one of those. He was a nice guy, and he had a great tribute. God rest your soul, Michael. But you were a cheap bastard. Sorry. Now that doesn't mean that Cancers are always that way. Okay, it doesn't mean they're always that way. Sometimes they can be very giving. It's usually when they filled their cup first, though. Cancers can be we've talked about soulful, poetic, right? They channel feeling. If you're a Cancer, the key to you is you need to fill your cup. Once you fill your cup, you're good. You can share it with others. Cancers are tidal. They're tidal. The tide is in, the tide is out. The tide is in, the tide is out. Fill your cup and let it be brimming to overflow and share it with others. That's when you move. That's when you act. If you don't have your cup filled, then only you know what that is. If you don't have your cup filled, you can't share it with others. And that's true of the sign. That's how the sign rolls. All right. Cancers can be wounded easily, and loyalty is such a big deal. If you are disloyal to a Cancer, they will never forget it. Never. It's bigger than some ways Leo. Leos will get their pride and their hubris hurt a little bit, but they eventually recover. Cancers don't. Cancers will remember that slight and that disloyalty for a very long time. And once you lose the trust of a Cancer, it's very hard to get back. Very, very hard. So remember that when you're dealing with these people. They're tough people. They're fucking tough people. And the thing about Cancers, it's like Mike Tyson is a perfect example. On the surface, he's like, whoa, this guy's mean, he's tough. But beneath the surface, Mike Tyson is a sensitive dude. He's a sensitive guy and hurt easily, right? So keep in mind when you're dealing with a Cancer, that's some of the things that they may look really independent and kind of, tough and I can handle my shit. And they can, but beneath that is somebody who's extremely sensitive. So there are times where you're like, whoa, I didn't think that would like hit you that way, right? That's how Cancers are. All right, so I'm gonna tell you my Pluto, my mother. Should I bring my mother's chart? Why don't I do that? Just for shits and giggles. Let me see if she's in here. I think she's in here somewhere. You can see my mother's chart. Where are you? I got my father's chart in here. Did I wipe her out? Let me see her. I don't think she's in here now. I think I might have taken her out. Anyway, my mother is a Pisces with Cancer rising and Pluto in Cancer. Oh, here it is. Here's her chart. I'll let you see my mother's chart. Here we go. So this is her chart. Let me just see here. Yeah. Yeah. All right, here we go. So this is my mother's chart. There's Pluto on the ascendant and Pluto. There's Cancer rising and Pluto on the ascendant. Like, so, tough fucking chart. And Mercury in Aries, she never stops talking. I swear to God. I remember the first time when I found out she had Mercury in Aries. I went, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Never stops talking. Anyway, this is what I want to focus on. Oh, look at that. Her true node is conjunct my ascendant. Wouldn't you know it? So Pluto, all right, here's what happens yesterday. And this has happened before. This is Pluto Cancer rising. You can see the stubborn part of her too. She's got that Mars-Uranus conjunction, wide conjunction in Taurus. She's really, really stubborn. Anyway, so yesterday we do the webinar, and can you come downstairs? Your mother's not feeling good. I'm like, okay. So I come down, and she's just, not doing good. Not doing good. So what do? We get her in the car. We roll her out to the hospital. We take her to emergency. And the doctor comes in. This doctor's cool. This doctor is so cool. He prayed over my mother. Okay. That's how cool this doctor was. I love this guy. And with his years of experience and her levels and everything, it looks like she's dying. Okay. It looks like she's dying. And he's bringing me aside. And he said, I've been doing this a long time and she's real sick. And it looks like you need to get her into hospice. I'm like, all right, well, you're the doctor. I'm like, okay. So we get her. So she gets in there and they start tweaking her and doing some stuff. And the next thing you know, her blood pressure's up, her heart rate is up, and they're all scratching their heads, right? Like this is a while later. Before that, he said, she's got to go. She's got to get airlifted. She's got to get airlifted to either Austin or San Antonio to get a pacemaker. I'm like, how much is that going to, I mean, here's my cancer kicking in. How much is that going to fucking cost? Can we just drive her there? Can we just put her in an ambulance? Oh no, timing is everything. Like he thinks that she's really going to die and that they've got to get her to a hospital ASAP and they've got to throw a pacemaker in there for her to make it. Right. And so we're having to have this conversation. Like it's either hospice or pacemaker. And you may not make it through the pacemaker. That's how like intense it was. Then he comes back later and he's like scratching his head. And she's like, oh, I feel so much better now. And she's chirping away. Mercury and Aries just chirping away. I can't tell you how many times this woman has almost died. Like the last time she was in the hospital in California. Here we go. Pluto, right there. Pluto on the ascendant. They said there was a doctor walked into the room, said, you're lucky to be here. And there's a very good chance you may not make it out of here. What does she do? She makes it out of there. All of her friends say, oh my God, you're not going to be able to make it to Texas. What does she do? She makes it to Texas. She comes here. The doctor says, oh, looks like you're going to be in hospice. What does she do? She gets on a freaking helicopter. Now she's in San Antonio. She's going to get a pacemaker. And she's chirping around and talking to all the nurses and telling her all. I mean, my God, like you want to see Pluto on the ascendant? There it is. Every time she's about to go down, fucking Pluto kicks in. She's got 9 lives, this woman. And I'm not exaggerating. They're like calling her the cat lady. This is like how intense, this Pluto thing is on the ascendant. And it's in Cancer. Like she's clawing onto life itself. And it is so intense because we had to have this conversation about death, right? I'm like, she's like freaking out. Am I going to die? Am I going to die? Am I going to die? Am I going to, I don't want to die. So I don't want to, like, it got really intense. Really, I felt like, Tom Berenger's character in Platoon. And he's talking to his buddy, John McGinley. He's like, Bob, I got a bad feeling about this. And he pulls him aside, says, Red, we all got to die sometime. Like I kind of felt like having that conversation with my mother yesterday, but I didn't. And it was that morbid fear of death, which is this double-edged sword which keeps her alive. It's one of the most fascinating things I told you I had a front row seat with this thing. And it is the absolute terror of death and the crab claws hanging on to the side of the cliff face, the crevasse that's pounded wave after wave right by the ocean and hangs on for dear life. That's what I'm witnessing here. I got to tell you, it's a trip. It's a total trip. So there you go. She's coming up on her 3rd Saturn return. How about that? It'll be interesting to see what happens when Saturn conjuncts her sun in 2 years. And the Saturn opposition with Neptune. There you go. Kind of an intense chart, isn't it? I think it's intense. Even Venus and Saturn conjunction. That's hard. That's a hard conjunction, especially in Aries. Wow. Interesting shit. All right. So that's my Pluto Cancer moment with my mother. Watching it, front row seat. Now she's going to get a pacemaker, Leo. Kicking in. The old ticker kicking in. I told her to watch the show tonight. I wonder if she will. All right, let's go back to the chart of the moment. Let's see where we are. Let's go home. Take me home. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy watching this thing. All right, here we are. We started the show off with Cancer, Sag rising. We've moved into Cap rising. So now the conversation gets serious. Okay. There's our sun at 4 Cancer. Moon just went into Libra, so we have a sun moon square. Loyalty versus social frivolity. Mercury and Gemini creeping up on the sun. So there is a lot of chatter in the atmosphere. And we're making the most of it here tonight. The sun is still in square with Neptune, but it's moving away a little bit. Tomorrow it's at 5 degrees, and that puts it 3, 7, 8. So by Tuesday, Wednesday, that sun is out of the mathematical square with Neptune, which will help, I think, some of the overall celestial atmosphere. There's not a lot of trust with the Mercury, with the Sun Neptune square. It's kind of like being let down again and let down again, let down again. It's kind of like, how many times do we have to fucking hear about Hunter Biden and all the shit that's happened and nothing happens? That's a Sun Neptune square. And eventually what happens is you just become inured to everything. You're like, who cares? Who cares? Nothing happens. Nothing changes. And we have detachment, but we also have demoralization, because you have to be kind of bought in on an emotional level to some degree with everything, or else you really don't care, right? It's the degree of the emotion. It's the level of the emotion. So once the sun clears Neptune a little bit, and it gets up to about 6, 7 degrees, 8 degrees, now we got a sun trine with Saturn, and we have the ability to feel and have a container for our feelings. Saturn's a great container for our feelings. You can build on your feelings, especially if your feelings are what? Cancerian. And what are they going to represent? Things that are organic and whole, things that are connected to your home, right? These are values that are really important, very important. So you're going to see more of these values over the course of the next few days become much more apparent. You're going to have more talk about patriotism in America. We just came through a really interesting month in June. We're still in June, but Gemini season. And I'm going to show you a little bit later the effects of Pluto retrograde, which is kind of reset everything. I'll show you in a little bit here. It's really fascinating. But the traditional values and things that are kind of more akin to being an organic, biological, analogical organism. That's what Cancer is to me. It's biological and analogical. Right? Analogical means it's analog. We're not in synthetic world. We're not in digital world. You know, if anything, Cancer is kind of the opposite of that. It's not really. I mean, the opposite is Capricorn, but Capricorn will use anything at its disposal. You know, Capricorn can use technology because the next sign over is Aquarius. You know, Capricorn looks over there and goes, yeah, let's use it. It's, you know, it's in the wheelhouse. On the other side, it's Sagittarius. And it's like, well, you know, let's make use of partners that are, you know, all across this great domain of ours, right? That's Capricorn. That's how it rolls. Cancer is not like that. Cancer is much more analog. So when we get into 6, 7, 8 degrees, we're still in first decan Cancer, but we have a nice focal point, or not a focal point, but a nice base and foundation with Saturn. So I talked about Juno, and Juno's now behind the sun in the start of new projects, the start of something new. That was all last week, right? That's been talking about the Sun Juno conjunction for a while. Hopefully you did start something new, and you're able to take me up on my astrological advice. If not, you could still be in that trend with the Saturn Sun trine. So if you have a dream, right, and a dream that's related to your home or your family, you want to upgrade, you want to do something that strengthens those ties, this is a good time to do it. And it feels like we're leaning into more of that as we head into summer here. Once we get past that Neptunian square, we're almost there. Like there's more trust, there's more confidence. And this is something that's been beating the shit out of like humanity. Not just Americans, but humanity has, you know, had the stuffing knocked out of it over the last 3 years, really. So it feels to me like we're kind of crawling out of a hole here It really does. Saturn's going to go retrograde, but even if it goes retrograde, it's still going to be in trine with the sun. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Now we will get into that sun Chiron square, but that's not going to be for like another, really 10 days. And it starts to get more into that. You get to test your ideas a little bit. You get to see how strong they are with the sun Chiron square. Jupiter is in Taurus. How much have we really talked about Jupiter and Taurus? That was kind of the theme of the webinar on Saturday. And let me give you a quick little insight into Jupiter and Taurus from the webinar. And this is something that I think you guys would find really interesting. I looked at past Jupiter cycles. And, the whole idea, this is why I think it takes some effort to really understand astrology. Like, there are people who have a really good grasp on astrology, and there are savants out there. A lot of them are young people, and they're really, really good. And I encourage them to continue their deep exploration of astrology. But it takes a little bit of effort sometimes in order to really see these cycles that are at play. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Because when I first started to look at Jupiter and Taurus, I just thought that we would be in a really abundant period. And I was shocked about what I found. And so I looked at these previous Jupiter cycles. So the last one that we were in was from 6/5/11 to 6/11/12. So a little over a year. Jupiter cycles are a year. So there was that. Prior to that, we had 6/29/99 to 6/30/00, right? Prior to that, 3/9/88 to 3/11/89. Prior to that, 3/27/76 to 4/3/77. Prior to that, 4/13/64 to 4/21/65. And prior to that, 4/21/9/52 to 5/9/53. Now, I stopped there because prior to that, we have Jupiter in a World War II cycle, right? So this is post-World War II. And I wanted to look at, the effects of post-World War II Jupiter. So what did I find? 6/11, 6/5/11, 6/11/12. At the end of 2012, U.S. debt was 16.05 trillion. That made the debt to GDP ratio 100% higher than any time since World War II. What does that mean? That means it was good for the elites. It was good for the elites. They were spending money like drunken sailors in Washington. Obama and company, by the way, Trump spent a lot of money too, so it's not just Obama. Huge, huge, huge debt to GDP ratio. 100%. Huge, huge spending. Was not a great time necessarily for the American consumer. Okay. 6/29/99 to 6/30/00. The burst of the stock market bubble occurred in the form of the NASDAQ crash in March 2000. Growth in gross domestic product slowed considerably in the third quarter of 2000 to the lowest rate since the contraction in the first quarter of 1992. Not good for the consumer. Not good. Good for the elites. Why? They set up all those arbitrages in the dot-com world. Just remember that. 3/9/88, 3/11/89. Throughout 89 and 90, the economy is weakening as a result of restrictive monetary policy enacted by the Federal Reserve. At the time, the stated policy of the Fed was to reduce inflation, a process which limited economic expansion. You'll see that again here. You'll see that again as another Jupiter cycle. So you would think that with Jupiter and Taurus, everybody is just having a party, right? That economically there would be expansion. That's not the case. These are downturns. Why? I'll show you why. Just hang on for a second. I'll show you why. 3/27/76, 4/3/77. On the international economic scene, the year 1977 saw the spread of protectionism, increasing trade friction, and international currency unrest, while the major developed countries suffered from business stagnation, unemployment, and inflation. Every time we've seen Jupiter and Taurus, you think the proles are going to get a little piece of the pie, but oh no, it doesn't happen. Hang in there, I'll tell you why. This is the one time there is a difference, and I'll tell you why too. The U.S. economy continued into its fifth consecutive year of expansion in 1965, the longest boom since the end of World War II. By the end of the year, the expansion, which began in February 1961, was 59 months old, performing beyond expectations. The economy set records in most areas. Why was that different? The difference is that is really the peak of the American economy. The post-war American economy is at its peak. Japan has not entered into the fray yet. That won't happen until right around 67, 68, where this major amplification of trade and the high quality of transistorized production. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, you see the introduction of Japanese automobiles, right? And by that time, there's huge ripple effect in the American economy. So Japan is not a player yet here. All the post-war economic boom is in full swing. And you need a strong economy to do what? To launch Johnson's War on Poverty and the Great Society. If you want to have people buy into a welfare state, which is exactly what happens here, you need to have a booming economy. And it's like, hey, everybody's doing great. Yeah, let's all of a sudden bring in a bunch of entitlements and create the welfare state. Now, to be fair, there is also a lot happening in terms of sort of the social policy, right? Like, you have the civil rights. It's the civil rights era. So there's a lot going into people's psyche and consciousness. Okay, now we have civil rights. Now let's have entitlements. It's sort of like, don't you feel a little bit guilty? Yeah, well, let's give these people a head start. By the way, Head Start was a program that comes out of that period, and it's part of the package, right? But the other side of that, too, is the death of Kennedy. And people are just kind of like, oh, my God, we're so in shock. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do this whole war on poverty thing. And it fucked everything up. It completely fucked everything up. Like, that's really the hammer and the nail of, the lesser welfare state. And we're still dealing with the ramifications of this. But they were able to do it because Jupiter was in Taurus and everything was hunky-dory financially. Go back one more Jupiter cycle. 429.52, 59.50, the recession of 1953 was a period of economic downturn in the United States that began in the second quarter of 1953 and lasted until the first quarter of 1954. Total recession cost roughly $56 billion. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like Jupiter and Taurus should be, well, there's plenty of fat of the land and meat on the bone for all. Why? It's the elites. It's a cycle that favors the why. They eat first. That's why. Now, when you look at the effects of Jupiter and Taurus, these are 10-year cycles. So the downstream effect of Jupiter and Taurus is that the economy eventually gets better. Eventually, right? Eventually is the key word here. It eventually gets better. But it's not better initially because the elites eat first with Jupiter, and then they throw out the scraps. So we really didn't cover Jupiter and Taurus as much as, I'd maybe have liked to. It was part of the webinar, but this is part of it, right? These are these Jupiter cycles. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I looked them up. None of these are prosperous except for this one right here. And I stated the reasons why it was a prosperous cycle. Okay. So what does that mean with Jupiter and Taurus now? Well, I don't think you should go spending your assets and resources willy-nilly. But if we can, here's one of the other things that I came away with the Jupiter cycle, at least where we are right now, is that I think we're going to see a bit of an uptick in the crypto market. And that's the Uranus retrograde, which we'll be dealing with. So I think we're going to see, but at the same time, this is what I talked about yesterday, is that when you see an uptick in the crypto market, we're headed into a pump and dump season. And I think that's going to be the sign that we're headed towards the CBDC, because they want to get people interested in that shit, right? They want them interested. So anyway, there's a little Jupiter and Taurus for you. All right, where else are we with the chart of the moment? A little divergence, but hey, I think you got some decent knowledge and value out of that little segment there. Okay, where are we? Let's do this. Let's do this. Here we go. And we're back here. Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. There we go. That's what we want right there. Here we go. All right. Chart of the moment right there. Bringing it back. Is there anything else we want to look out for? That Venus-Mars conjunction. I've actually had to deal with my temper. I've had to deal with my temper with this Mars-Uranus. Not temper, patience. Patience. Like I'm just being honest here, right? Like your patience will get tested with the Mars-Uranus square. It's just going to get tested. So what do? You got to blow steam off. You got to blow some steam off. If you exercise and work out, and I have my life has been turned upside down, so I haven't had a lot of time for that. But if you exercise and work out, this is a good time to blow some steam off, right? Go hit a big bag, sweat, just get it out of your system. And Mars is going to be squaring Uranus here for almost 2 weeks, right? So that's the key. Mars-Uranus squares are explosive. And it's okay to be explosive, but you want to be explosive in context, right? You want to have explosive context. If you're explosive out of context, it's all about anything's about context. And if you're explosively out of context, then you're destructive. But if it's in context and you're explosive, you can be really creative, right? Like sometimes a creative period is born out of tension and it's explosive. Like you have to get it out of your system in order to create something. And there's nothing wrong with that. There a lot of creative genius is tempestuous in some ways, but you don't want to be tempestuous in ways that can be destructive or counterproductive. My Virgo is speaking through here. Like you want it to be productive. So you want to get it out, right? You want to, because I think there's a lot of charge in the air. Period. End of story. Like there's so much charge in the air. Just go click on any TikTok video or go to Twitter and you can see any number of videos of people that are losing their shit, right? Is that anything new? No. But I think that there's been a real uptick in it. Like people are just really on edge. And with this Mars-Uranus square, you don't want to be the person that's going to be reactive. But if you're going to be disruptive and explosive, be proactive and do it in a way where you're going to make change in your life. Like that's really, I think, the best byproduct of this square is making change. Relationships can be a bit of a strain. There's a lot of dynamic tension in terms of relationships now, but there's also a lot of passion too. I think it's an interesting dynamic. I think it's one of those dynamics that can be good makeup sex. Like if you get into a good fight or a good row with your partner, I think the makeup sex can be as equally as good. Just make sure nobody gets hurt. Just saying. We've got the moon in Libra. So, of course, we've got a square going on. By the time we wake up tomorrow, that moon will be out of that square. It'll be, what will it be doing more of? Not much, really. We'll have a Moon Chiron opposition probably by tomorrow night, Tuesday morning, Moon Chiron opposition. Maybe some of your relationships that you've been counting on and banking on might need a little tune up there with that Chiron opposition. Don't take some of your relationships and agreements for granted with the Chiron opposition. That's Tuesday. We're definitely going to Tuesday with that. We talked about Jupiter. These nodes are about to move. Why don't we do this? Let's talk about the nodes. I want to talk about the nodes, and I want to talk about this Pluto retrograde moment, and then we'll wrap it up with some maybe some interaction with some of you guys if you want to jump on the show a little bit here. I'll take a few live people, a few live bodies. Let's do this. I was going to talk about this last week, but I'm going to talk about it today because we got a little truncated last week. So let's do this. So these are the nodes, right? The nodes are about to shift. So on the 19th of July until 1/11/25, the true node is going to move into Aries. That means the south node will move into Libra. And this starts the nodal eclipse cycle of Aries, which is going to be a humdinger. This nodal cycle initiates us essentially into a 6-year Aries cycle. It starts here with the true node in Aries. By the time we get to the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026, Saturn's moving into Aries. Neptune is moving into Aries. Hello, right? That's huge. So everything that's being set up now by this nodal flip is going to be a precursor for the next, essentially, 6 years. And I chose this image for a reason, because Aries is martial. And we're coming to this point with Aries. We're coming to this point with society where people have had enough. They've just had enough. And at some point, people are going to be fighting back. That's just the way it is, right? They're going to be fighting back. They already are. I mean, we can see this with, some of these boycotts and the thing that happened with Bud Light and Starbucks, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So the fighting spirit is already there. It's already there. People are already imbued with the spirit. We talked about this again last week, right? And Aries is what? Male energy. It's masculine energy. And it is going to be on the uptick. So the nodes are like surfing, and you want to surf the node. So what do you want to do? You want to work out. You want to get engaged with things like martial arts, boxing, working out, self-sufficiency. This is where the energy is. Now, maybe you're already there. So during this nodal cycle, you get to show people how it's done. But I also feel like we're entering into a cycle that is connected to war. And we're already in a war. Let's be clear about that. We're clearly in a spiritual war. It's been going on for a while. And a lot of people are finally waking up to the fact that this is a spiritual war. But we're also in an asymmetric war, 5th generation war, all the things that one would think of as a country at war. Clearly, I could draw up a list from having infrastructure destroyed, having water supplies polluted, right? Propaganda. These are all faces of war. These are all sort of these nodal outputs of war. And we're dealing, the cognitive dissonance is that we know that we're at war. I mean, it could just be a culture war.
It could just be a culture war. It could be a war over a definition of what a man or a woman is, or a war of what happens to our kids in public schools, because those seem to be the front lines of what's taking place, right? You have people that are finally stepping up and saying, this is bullshit and we don't want this being taught in our schools. Well, if you're really going to tap into Aries, you're going to take your kids out of that school and you're going to homeschool them, because that's what Aries is about. It's taking responsibility for the change that you want in your life that nobody else is going to do for you. Nobody else is going to do it. So you're like, fuck it. I'm going to do it. I'll do it. I'll be in charge of it. That's the lesson here, right? That's the lesson. And I think it's important to understand that, we're on the edge of a much bigger conflict. When I look down the line and I see Saturn and I see Neptune conjuncting in Aries, to me, that is big time war. Okay? It's what it is. Big time. And we're going through a big eclipse cycle here inside the United States. We're letting hundreds of thousands of people that we don't know who the fuck they are or where the fuck they came from into this country. You know, and rumor has it that they're being shipped around to other parts of this country doing what? Like there's video of these people hanging out in West Texas, and they're not there learning how to change oil or rebuild transmissions. Okay, so what are they doing out there? This is what we're talking about. And this is why I think during this time, right, with this true node in Aries, this cycles back to when Mars was in Aries. You know, when Mars was in Aries during COVID, man, it was just like everything was like the front lines of America. The front lines of freedom were right here on the streets of, no, they weren't even on the streets of America. They were in the storefronts of America, where you had to have your papers to, buy a loaf of bread or a 6-pack of beer, and your papers consisted of either a mask or some kind of thing that said you'd been, carjacked, right? That was all Mars and Aries. And how did you feel back then? How did you feel in 2020? Oh, I bet you were fired up. I was really fired up. Every day I would get up and I would play the Rolling Stones, and I would start with Monkey Man, and I would get into Street Fighting Man. By the time I got into that song cycle, that Rolling Stones song cycle, man, I was fired up every day. So here it comes again. True node in Aries is coming around, and you're going to get fired up again. Why? Because the world's going to get fired up. And the thing about the true node in Aries, just like Mars in Aries, astrology is agnostic. What else did we have during that time? Well, we had the riots in the streets of America. Summer of Floyd, where America burned. Hello, Mars and Aries. It's agnostic. So in as much as you're fired up, guess what? Other people are going to be fired up as well. Oh, isn't that going to be fun? So this is where this is all headed. It's all headed in this direction. And anytime you come to a great reset, and World War II was a great reset. World War I was a great reset. Those are great resets. Everything gets reset. So what do they do when they have wars? They reset the table. They wipe out history. They reset the boundaries and the demarcations and the borders of countries. Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries is going to be a big deal. It's the season of production. It's mobilizing forces. Whatever the threat is. It could be China. It could be Russia. It could be China and Russia. It could be aliens. It could be Americans. Whatever it is, there's a mobilization of a threat. And that's all coming, right? So my piece around this Saturn and Pisces period, which is what we're in now, is we're in a bit of an interregnum. We're in a bit of a limbo state here, right? We're between this kind of period of reckoning. Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries is a reckoning. In those 3 years, from 2026 to 2029, right, that is the final stages for what? Agenda 2030. Those 3 years. And there is nothing in the atmosphere celestially that will ground any of it. Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. We are off in the freaking space. Okay. So you have a nodal cycle here to get your shit together. You have a nodal cycle to get your shit together. Figure out how to do things. Get your body back in shape. Learn how to be independent. Be independent with other people, right? No man or woman is an island. Work together, train together, learn together. But this is not a time where you can sleep on your shit, right? True Note and Taurus, we're all trying to kind of get it back together. Pull the pieces of matter, terra firma back together. Man, we just came through this nodal cycle in Gemini. It was fucking crazy. All right, let's pull it back together in Taurus. All right, you've had enough time now. Uranus in Aries, True Note in Aries. Get it together. I know a lot has been asked of each and every one of you. But we're almost home. We're almost home. And this is a time where we need to really put our will into action. And what is our will? Our will is to create the conditions inside of our lives so that we can be responded to a higher will. And look, over the last few months, my workout schedule has just gone to shit. And I've got to get back into the gym and I've been looking at pictures of Robert F. Kennedy. Fuck, that guy's fucking yoked. By the way, have you seen him and Mel Gibson? They're jacked. They are totally jacked. They're both Capricorns. And I think that they probably see the same doctor in LA. I think Bobby Kennedy Jr. spends a lot of time in LA because that's where Cheryl hangs out. I was going to do her chart. I'll save it for next week. There's plenty to talk about. Anyway, this True Note in Aries is a big cycle. It is coming. It is time for you to hone who you are. Got to do it. Got to do it. And you may have to hone who you are and fend off the infidels simultaneously. All right. I'll get into more of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction next week. All right. What else do we have? Let's do this. Okay. So all right. I'm going to show you guys like fucking how astrology works on what we call a mundane level. Okay. To me, this is, and again, we're talking Western Placidus. All right. So what did Starbucks do in the month of June? They pulled all of their pride stuff, right? That's what they did. They pulled their pride stuff. And when did that happen? Anybody know? Well, I'll tell you when it happened. In fact, more than tell you, I'll even show you when it happened. Give me 1 second here. All right, check this out. So Starbucks, oh, that's not it. Hold on. It's right here. There. Starbucks pulled all their pride material on the 12th of June. When did Pluto go retrograde into Capricorn? Yeah. Yeah, it was the day before. It was already retrograde in Aquarius. But on the 11th, Pluto went retrograde into Capricorn. Monday comes around. Of course, Starbucks makes the announcement. I mean, to me, that is, and then the next day, there's a huge press release. Baristas are threatening to strike, right? Pluto, it sounded good when Pluto was in Aquarius. but it didn't look as good, or it didn't bring in as much money as they thought it would. Pluto goes retrograde into Capricorn and they pull it. And I talked about this, right? When Pluto goes into Aquarius, what's going to happen? It's going to it'd be like you're sticking your head into a fucking Rick and Morty episode. And then when Pluto goes retrograde, it'll flip. And you'll see kind of more signs of normalcy return. It's exactly what we're talking about here. Pluto retrograde. There it is, right? Starbucks retraction. Monday, June 12th, 8 a.m., Pluto goes retrograde. What do you know? What do you know? And it's a square with Jupiter, and they're looking at their bottom line. They don't want to lose their bottom line. Like, okay, we're finally going to make a statement here, not because we don't care about our so-called trans or FB, LGBTQ plus employees. No, we actually care about money. We actually care about money. And we saw what happened to fucking Bud Light. We saw what happened to Target, and we're not gonna bleed the business. And the thing about Starbucks is that it doesn't have franchises. I take that back. There's only a few people that have Starbucks franchises. One of them is Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was given Starbucks franchises. Magic Johnson got so much shit because he was good shit because he was Magic Johnson. Anyway, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. There it is. That is astrology, mundane astrology 101. Almost to the day Pluto goes retrograde, Starbucks pulls its pride stuff. You look it up. The first stories about it are the day after, June 13th. And a small fraction of their employees are up in arms. So we can see, even with Saturn in Pisces and this whole thing with the Titan and the Titanic, and oh my God, right? That whole weird thing. When you look at Pisces is a dualistic sign. I mean, you can see it here, right? It's essentially two fish swimming away from each other. I mean, that's what it's supposed to look like. But it looks a lot like its pal Gemini over here. The difference between the two is that Gemini is it's like a closed loop, and Pisces is an open loop, but it's still dualistic. So you have this dual imaging of these two craft. I think it's fascinating. All right, so there you go. I just wanted to show that to you guys because I thought it was interesting. All right, so before I open up the lines here, you guys want to come in. I have some business to take care of. Okay. And last week, I asked for, prayer, good energy, whatever you could do for our friend Jillian Malone. And I had a conversation with Jillian's husband, Mark. And one of the things that I encouraged him to do was to create a Give Fund Go, GoFundMe, crowdsource opportunity. So I just want to put this up here and talk about it before we get too much deeper into the show. So let me do this. Let me do a little share here. And I'll refresh your memories here a little bit. So Jill has breast cancer. It's very, 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 very aggressive. Super, super aggressive. So I'm just going to read this. This was created by Oliver Schuster. Our sister Jillian Schuster Malone. So this is her brother. Is one of the kindest, most generous, and supportive people we have the honor of calling family. She's wonderful. I've known Jillian, I think, since the sometime around 2014 or so. So going on 10 years as a client. And when I met her, she asked me to do a chart on Mark. And I thought to myself, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. And shortly thereafter, she went and visited him in Minnesota, and that was it. And they were done. And now they have 3 children together. So let me read this. She has dedicated her life to speaking up for people with her efforts in the Peace Corps, working with nonprofits for immigration as a family lawyer in lower income areas. Now her husband, Mark, and kids, Aaron, 3, Iona, 2, and Sky, 10, need your help. Jillian was diagnosed in February with an extremely aggressive triple negative breast cancer that initially started in her breast and lymph node. The diagnosis came 6 months after giving birth to Sky, while Jill was breastfeeding and taking care of her 2 other little kids. Now Mark has had to take time away from work to take care of everyone, including Jillian, during this difficult time. Despite Jillian's efforts to undergo cryoablation surgery and other clinically successful treatments, the cancer has spread to her lungs, liver, and bones. Triple negative cancer is notoriously treatment resistant. The only option left for her is to undergo extensive targeted treatments that will support recovery and save her life. 12 weeks with genetically specific non-invasive chemotherapy, antioxidant, IV drip therapy, dietary therapy, oxygenation, hyperbaric, hydrogenated, and other specialized treatment curated for her needs. This treatment clinic has had success in full recovery of stage 4 patients. Your help could mean a wife and mother returns to her family indefinitely. We do not usually use social media to ask for personal requests or ask for help, but at this time, we need your help. We are seeking to raise as much money as possible to help cover their expenses. If you're not in position to give, we ask that you help us by sharing Jillian's story on your social media. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for any contribution, whether it be monetary or a simple share of the story. Hashtag Jillian Malone's fight. So this is a family that's really worthy of some care. And I know, we've done some things in the past. I just think that, if we could pitch in and, do what we can to see if we can get her into this treatment, I think it could be awesome, and this is a very Aquarian deal. We started the night talking about Cancer, right? This is what we talked about, the sign. And we talked about how strange it is to be connected to, this malady. And I think we'll bring this part of the show. I'm going to talk to you guys if you're into it. We're going to bring this part of the show to a close by again addressing cancer, but it's not the kind of cancer that we wanted to talk about at the beginning of the show. It's the type of cancer that is really consumption. And if you could help Jill out here, and this is somebody, you can see that people, $50, $111, $44, $150. Oh, look at that. Laura Eisenhower donated $100. Isn't that great? Laura Eisenhower. Anonymous 20. You can be anonymous if you want. So, if we could help her a little bit, I think that'd be awesome. And there you go. There you go. Mark and Jill. Jill, you're going to get better. We're going to get you into this treatment. Spend a week with my mother. Maybe a little her rub off on you. Here we go. All right. Why don't we do this? I'm going to open up the old chatteroo here. And I'll take a few of you guys if you want to jump in. Want anything you want to share or say or anything, right? Ask. Let's do this. There you go. The link is in. We'll take a few calls here to round the night off, bring us into maybe about 9:30. Nice 3-hour show. There it is. I thought TB was consumption. I don't know. Isn't that what they called? What do they call cancer? At a certain point, wasn't it consumption? Let's look it up. All right. Consumption is a disease. Tuberculosis. How we conquered consumption. Cancer wasn't always called cancer, though, was it? Let's see. Okay. Origin of the word cancer. What was cancer called in history? Okay. Hippocrates called cancer carcinoma because the tumor looked like a crab. There you go. Carcinoma. Hippocrates, the father of medicine. Carcinoma looked like a crab. Let's do this. Let's see. I'm looking at, was cancer called consumption? No, it's just TB. It seems like there is some crossover with cancer and consumption. It's a weird story. Oh, Moulin Rouge. That's strange. Okay. Carcinoma, consumption. And there might have been some crossover with cancer. All right. Let's see if we have anybody in here that wants to talk. Do we have any takers here? Anybody want to get in? Anything you want to say? I'll put the link in there. Cancel. Yeah, carcinoma. There you go. Looked like a crab. Wasting disease. Thank you, Diane. Wasting disease. That's the one I was thinking of. Wasting disease. I'll put the link in one more time. All you got to do is just click on the link. Boys and girls, if you want to get in on the show, everything you want to say. There you go. Gluttony, Knight of Cups. Any takers? Link not working for me. I'm not sure why. Should work. All you got to do is click on it. Here, let me get out. All you got to do is click on it. Not sure why. Almost click the link. One more time. One more time. Rick Simpson oil, see 60 Minutes Australia. Yeah, I think they're kind of hip to that. Anyway, if you want to help out, the link is actually already there inside of the show notes. I guess people don't want to talk. Error occurred. I don't know what's going on. It should work. All right, maybe that's a sign. Maybe we should wrap this up. I'll work on it for next week because I think it's really fun when we interact. And I like interacting. Let's see, what did LG say? I thought the turning point, Jose Cancer threw when the ball hit him in the head. No, that wasn't that. That was, no, not really. The turning point is when his mother died. And he decided that he was just going to go all in on steroids. No. Yeah, that's when he was in Boston. Canseco's an interesting character. I actually like Canseco. I'd like to interview him. He was the one guy that actually told the truth about steroids. Jose's a dragon, born in 1964. All right. I think we're good. Thanks for being here, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a fine night with y'all. And I'll be back on Tuesday with 15 Minutes of Flame. Don't forget, I have a link in the show notes if you want to get some of the best CBD, which has really helped me through this time. Go check out our friend at True Hemp Science. Just click on that link. You spend $100 and you'll be able to get some free goodies, which is always great. And you're helping out a Main Street business. And we love our friend Chris and all of his great products. And that's about it. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back here next week, Sunday Night Astro Live. Want to read it with me? You can click on the show notes and it'll take you right to my readings page. All right. Take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to 7 what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Bye for now.